Okay, so picture this scenario for a second. It's a Tuesday night. You are standing at your window. You're looking out at the city traffic, the lights, just the general movement of the world outside.
Right.
And you've been on this journey of self-mastery for a while now. If you've been following along with the sources we've been covering, you've done the work from the earlier parts in the manuscript. You've mastered your physical health in part 1. You've learned to sense that underlying current or the force in part 2.
You're embodied.
Exactly. You feel strong. You feel capable. But there's this nagging frustration.
A very specific kind of irritation.
Yeah, really specific irritation, because you realize that while you can feel when you're aligned, you absolutely cannot seem to design it or replicate it on demand. It feels completely accidental.
Like catching a perfect wave when you're surfing.
Yes. When you're on it, it's absolute magic. You feel unstoppable. But then you're sitting there the next day thinking, I have no idea how to actually build the wave. I just have to hope I get lucky again. I think everyone tuning in to this deep dive has been there, that massive gap between having a good day and knowing the mechanics of how to have a good day.
And that is actually a really dangerous place to be. I'm so glad to be here to unpack this with you today, because it's the gap between being an artisan and being an architect.
An artisan and an architect.
Yeah.
Okay, break that down for us before we get into the weeds.
So an artisan feels their way through the clay, right? They rely on intuition, they rely on touch and trial and error. But an architect has a blueprint. They know exactly where the load-bearing walls are. And that is exactly where we are going today. We are leaving the realm of feeling, and we are entering the realm of building.
Which brings us to the core of today's deep dive. We are jumping into part 3 of the Metamind manuscript, and this section is titled The Physics of Ignition.
It's a heavy title.
It really is. And I have to be honest with you, when I first saw the subheader for this section, it's called Mathematics.
Yeah.
I had a bit of a visceral reaction. I thought, wait, are we doing algebra now? I thought this source material was about psychology. I thought it was about human potential and mindsets. It felt a little cold.
I get that. It does look intimidating at first glance. I'll definitely give you that. But this isn't high school math. I like to think of it as the algebra of becoming.
The algebra of becoming.
Right. Think about it this way. If part 2 of the manuscript was about learning to play music by ear, getting the soul of it, feeling the improvisation, then part 3 is music theory.
Oh, God.
It's learning how to actually read the score so you can compose your own symphonies rather than just hoping you stumble onto a catchy melody again by accident. You can't build a skyscraper on vibes. You need actual physics.
You can't build a skyscraper on vibes. I love that. So we are moving from embodiment, which is feeling it, to formalization, which is essentially coding it.
Exactly. We are looking at the integration architecture today. Specifically, chapters E through H of the manuscript.
So what's the roadmap for the listener?
We're going to cover 4 main pillars. First, why we suck at finishing things, which the text calls the harvest.
Right.
Then we're going to look at the physics of how to actually start a project called the atom. After that, we'll look at the duality, which completely challenges everything we think we know about work-life balance.
That part is fascinating.
It really is. And finally, saturated synergization, which is probably the most complex, but definitely the most rewarding concept in the whole book.
And this whole framework centers around this weird little formula that the traveler, the protagonist of our source material, sees in a vision.
Yes, the ABCD formula.
It's 2 variables, a division symbol and an addition symbol.
It's the code beneath consciousness. And I know it looks super abstract right now, but I promise you, by the end of this deep dive, that formula will explain exactly why some days you are completely unstoppable and other days you literally can't get off the couch.
Let's start with the problem that plagues, I think, maybe 90% of high performers. The source material calls it flickering. And I actually want to challenge this idea a little bit right out of the gate.
Go for it.
Because flickering sounds harmless.
Yeah.
Like a light bulb just needing a little twist. But in practice, flickering feels like utter failure.
It feels like regression. Completely. Flickering is that universal experience where you start a new protocol, you decide you're waking up at 5 a.m., you're journaling, you're training hard.
You're drinking the green juice.
Exactly. And for 10 days, you are on fire, you feel like a completely new person. And then without any major catastrophe, no car accident, no flu, nothing goes wrong, you just you just drift.
You revert right back to
You
baseline.
revert to baseline.
And usually what happens is we blame our willpower. We tell ourselves, oh, I got lazy, or I just don't have the discipline that other people have.
Right. We moralize it. We turn it into a character flaw.
Yeah.
But the author of the manuscript argues very strongly that this isn't a character flaw at all. It's a structural error.
A structural error.
Yes, we flicker because we are totally obsessed with execution, but we are genuinely terrible at harvesting.
Okay, let's break that down. The harvest.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, harvest means the end result. Like if I did the work, didn't I automatically get the harvest? I planted the seeds, I watered them, I got the crop.
Not necessarily. So in the operational flow that the traveler discovers in Chapter E, there are 11 distinct steps to a transformation cycle. Most of us, culturally, we are trained to do steps 1 through 7.
Which is what?
We have an idea, we make a plan, we execute, we sweat, we grind, we produce the output.
That's the work. That's the hustle culture part that Instagram applauds.
That's the exertion. But that's exactly where we stop. We finish the project or we cross the finish line of the 30-day challenge, and we immediately look for the next mountain to climb. We completely skip steps 8 through 11.
And that's the integration phase.
Right. And skipping this phase is what guarantees the drift. Because if you don't harvest the energy you just generated, it dissipates.
So what is step 8 then?
Step 8 is called temporal culmination. It sounds fancy, but it's basically a cognitive hard stop. It's your brain explicitly recognizing, okay, this loop is closed.
So it's about boundaries.
It's the difference between running on a treadmill, which is endless and psychologically draining because there's no destination, and finishing a 10K race. One has a very clear culmination point. The other is just perpetual motion.
Okay, but simply saying I'm done doesn't seem like enough to prevent me from sliding back into my old habits. Like, I can say I'm done with my strict diet for the month and then immediately order a massive pizza.
Exactly, because it's not just saying I'm done. That's just the trigger. The real work happens in step 9.
Knowledge-directed creation.
Yes. This is where the manuscript makes a really crucial distinction between 2 different types of results. You have tangible artifacts and you have integrated capacities.
Define those for us so we have a clear picture.
A tangible artifact is the external proof. It's the thing you can point to. I wrote 50 pages. I lost 5 pounds. I cleaned the entire garage.
Checklist stuff.
The checklist stuff, that's what you show the world. That's the tangible artifact.
Okay, and the integrated capacity.
An integrated capacity is entirely internal. It is who you became in the process of doing that work. And here's the insight that I think is honestly worth the price of admission for this whole book. This answers your skepticism about flickering.
Let's hear it.
If you don't name the capacity, you don't keep it.
If you don't name the capacity, you don't keep it.
That sounds almost, I don't know, a bit like magical thinking. How does naming a feeling lock it in? Is this just a semantics game?
It sounds like it, but it's essentially neuro-linguistic programming. Let's take a really concrete example. Say you spent the last 2 weeks waking up super early to work on a side project before your actual day job starts.
Okay.
It was miserable. You were tired. You wanted to hit snooze and quit every single morning, but you did it anyway.
Right. So the tangible artifact in this case is the project getting done. I have the completed slide deck or the draft of the manuscript. Yes. But if you stop there, if you just take the artifact and move on, your brain files that whole memory under hard work or being tired.
Oh, wow.
So the next time you try to do it, your brain says, oh, I remember that. That was highly unpleasant. Let's definitely not do that again. Because the brain is an efficiency engine. It wants to delete trauma and friction.
It optimizes for comfort.
Always. But if you sit down at step 9 and you deliberately ask yourself, what capacity did I just demonstrate? You might realize, oh, I demonstrated the capacity to prioritize my creation over my immediate physical comfort.
Or I demonstrated the capacity to start working before motivation actually arrives.
Exactly. You are rewriting the tag on the mental file folder.
You are updating your identity.
You are telling your nervous system, hey, we are now the kind of entity that permanently possesses this specific power.
And the manuscript uses a very specific symbol for this step, right?
It does. The symbol is a circle with a plus sign inside it, the encircled plus. It represents the transformation from just doing an action to actually being the kind of person who does that action.
So without this step, you're just a person who did a hard thing once. But with this step, you're a person who has that strength permanently installed.
Precisely. You essentially loot the experience for the attribute, like in a video game. You don't just beat the boss and walk away. You have to loot the body for the new weapon or the armor.
I love that analogy. You loot the experience for the attribute. And that leads directly into step 10, which the text calls redualization.
Right. This is where you go back to the original problem that started the whole cycle in the first place.
Give me an example of that.
So maybe you started working out because you felt this tension between being sluggish versus wanting to be energetic. That was the initial tension that got you off the couch.
Sure. Sluggish versus energetic.
After doing the work and harvesting that new capacity we just talked about, you look at that original tension again. But now you have new data. So you realize, you know what? It wasn't actually just about being sluggish. It was deeper. It was about stagnation versus flow. Yeah.
You understand the problem from a much higher vantage point.
That's the spiral concept from part 2 coming back. You don't just go around in a flat circle. You spiral upward. Every cycle you complete and harvest pushes you to a higher level of awareness.
So this flickering we do, it happens because we stay on the flat circle. We just grind. We do the work, but we don't lock in the identity shift, so gravity just pulls us right back down to where we started.
Exactly. We act like Sisyphean tourists in the land of high performance rather than becoming permanent residents. And the harvest is how you finally get your visa.
Okay, so that's how we finish a cycle properly. That's the harvest in Chapter E. Now let's pivot and talk about how we start things. Because I feel like I've personally started 1,000 projects that just completely died on day 3.
We all have.
And this brings us to Chapter F, which is called the atom.
The event atom. This is step 1 of the new cycle.
The source poses a question here that really hit me hard. It asks, why does the exact same formula work perfectly for one project, but fail miserably for another?
It's a great question.
I've felt this so deeply. Like, I use a specific productivity system for my work. Let's say it's time blocking.
Mm-hmm.
And at work, I'm a machine. It works perfectly. But then I try to use the exact same time blocking system for my diet or my personal relationships, and I crumble instantly. Why does that happen? If the system works, shouldn't it work everywhere?
No, because the starting point determines the entire trajectory. The source calls this starting point the event atom. It is the nucleus of the action. If the atom is unstable at its core, the molecule, which is the project, will eventually explode under pressure.
So the system doesn't matter if the core is flawed.
It doesn't matter how good your time blocking system is if the core atom is radioactive.
The traveler breaks this down using what they call the 3 core modes. And I want to spend some real time here because this feels like a diagnostic tool the listener can actually use today. We have the person, the persona, and the principle.
Yes. Let's visualize them for a second because the geometry the author uses actually matters here.
Right.
The person mode is represented by a white circle. This is your authentic, biological, spiritual self. It's your fundamental I am. It's your raw, unfiltered feelings. I am lonely. I am tired. I have a deep desire to create art. It's just the naked truth of your human condition.
Okay, got it. White circle equals the pure self.
Then you have the persona. This is represented by a black circle. This is the role, the mask you put on, the CEO, the parent, the disciplined athlete. It's highly contextual. It's the hat you wear for a specific situation.
The role we play to interface with the world.
Exactly. And finally, the principle. This is represented by a gear symbol. This is the system, the rules, the cold automation, calendar block at 6 a.m., no carbs after 8 p.m., the daily checklist.
Okay, so we have the person, the persona, and the principle. White circle, black circle, gear. Where do we go wrong with these?
The grammar of alignment usually breaks because we try to solve a problem that exists in one mode using a solution from a completely different mode.
Yeah.
The author claims this is the source of almost all self-help failure.
Give me a really concrete example of that.
Here's a classic one. You have a person problem. You feel a deep, aching lack of purpose or maybe a profound sense of isolation. You're just lonely.
Right.
That is a white circle issue. It's a soul issue. But you try to solve it with a principle solution. You tell yourself, okay, I'm going to build a really rigorous daily schedule. I'm going to optimize my inbox to 0. I'm going to track my macros perfectly. If I just get super organized, I'll feel better.
You're trying to spreadsheet your way out
of an existential crisis. Exactly. And it fails every single time because a gear cannot heal a white circle. You can be the most highly organized, lonely person in the entire world, but you're still fundamentally lonely. The atom is completely unstable.
That is so incredibly common. We try to use productivity to solve emotional voids.
All the time. And conversely, you might have a principle problem. Like you just need to get your quarterly taxes done. It's purely administrative. It's a gear problem. But you try to solve it with persona.
How so?
You try to hype yourself up. You pace around the room trying to summon the inner warrior of accounting.
I do that. I literally say to myself, I am going to crush these spreadsheets. I am the Wolf of Wall Street today.
Yeah.
And then I'm just completely exhausted 10 minutes in.
Because it's a massive emotional cost for a very low value task. You don't need a persona for taxes. You just need a checklist. You need a gear. You are wasting your precious identity fuel on a purely mechanical problem.
So the traveler realizes that true ignition, a truly stable start, only happens when the person, the persona, and the principle are aligned vertically. They have to stack.
Yes, they have to support each other perfectly.
So what does a properly stable atom actually sound like in real life?
A stable atom sounds like this. Let's start with the person, the desire. I want to feel vital and alive because my body feels sluggish.
Okay, honest and raw.
Then the persona, the role.
Hmm.
To achieve this, I am stepping into the role of an athlete.
Clear context.
And finally, the principle, the system. And because I am an athlete, my running shoes are placed by the door at 6 a.m.
See, that flows beautifully. The system supports the role, and the role fulfills the deep desire.
Exactly. But most people just try to do the system. They just say, I have to run at 6 a.m., but they do it without adopting the identity of an athlete and without acknowledging the core desire for vitality.
And the manuscript calls that a hollow atom.
A hollow atom. The external shell is there, but the inside is completely empty. If you build a massive project on a hollow atom, you are essentially building a skyscraper on a sinkhole. The very moment real stress hits the system, the ground gives way and the whole thing collapses.
The source also mentions this diagnostic tool called the fuel check, and it uses the 40P framework: target, truth, totally title. We've touched on this framework a bit in previous deep dives, but how is it used here specifically for vetting the atom?
It acts as the gatekeeper. Before you launch any new cycle, before you publicly commit to the marathon or quit your job to launch the startup, you have to run your event atom through the 40P.
Walk us through the 4 checks.
First is target. Is this actually where I deeply want to go, or is it where society tells me I should go? Second is truth. Am I lying to myself about the real cost of this endeavor? Third is totally. Am I all in, or am I just dipping a toe to see if it's easy? And fourth is title. Who do I actually have to become to do this?
That truth check seems to be the one where people trip up the most.
It absolutely is. Am I lying to myself about the cost? We love to fantasize about the result, but we completely ignore the cost.
Right. We want the fit body, but we lie to ourselves about the pain of the dark 5 a.m. wake-ups.
A stable atom acknowledges the pain up front. It looks at the cost and says, I know this is going to hurt, it's going to be difficult, and I freely choose it anyway.
So if you can't answer those 4 questions cleanly, specifically the truth part about the cost.
The author's advice is incredibly strict here. Do not start. You have to fix the atom first. If you start a journey with a lie, you will inevitably end with a crash. It strongly suggests we should actually be starting far fewer things in our lives, but starting them with much, much higher fidelity.
A massive amount of our daily burnout just comes from open loops, doesn't it? Like all these projects we started on hollow atoms that are just sitting there slowly draining our battery because we neither finish them properly nor officially kill them.
Correct. It is infinitely better to have one single, perfectly aligned atomic ignition than 1,000 flickering sparks that go nowhere.
Okay, so we've harvested the past in Chapter E. We've built a stable atom to start the present in Chapter F. Now we actually have to move. And sustained movement requires fuel, which brings us to Chapter G, the duality.
Step 2 of the cycle, establish duality.
Now, when I hear the word duality, I usually think of conflict, good versus evil, light versus dark, Jedi versus Sith. But the text is very specific here that this isn't about opposition at all.
No, it's about tension, productive tension. Think of a massive suspension bridge, like the Golden Gate. That bridge only stands because of the massive tension between the steel cables pulling up and the force of gravity pulling down.
If you remove the tension, the bridge collapses.
Exactly. The traveler identifies the core duality of all human ignition as effort and restoration. Effort pointing one way, restoration pointing the exact opposite.
That seems almost too obvious, though. Work and rest. We know we need both. Literally every health article tells us to sleep more and stress less.
We know it conceptually, sure, but we don't live it structurally. Most of us secretly view them as enemies.
How do you mean?
We think, okay, I have to do all this effort, but this annoying biological need for sleep is getting in the way of my productivity. Or on the flip side, we think, I just want to relax and recover, but my boss and this project are ruining my weekend with work.
Right. We are constantly trying to maximize one side while completely minimizing the other. We want 100% effort and 0% wasted time.
Or we want 100% vacation and 0% responsibility. But the expert view in the manuscript is that effort is the fundamental drive to build, and restoration is the absolute biological need to integrate. You physically cannot build without integrating the materials. They are the inhalation and exhalation of the exact same organism. You can't just inhale forever, you'll pass out.
Which leads to this diagnostic tool introduced in Chapter G called the inversion kick. I have to say, I love this name. It sounds so aggressive.
It is aggressive. It's designed to kick the legs right out from under your excuses.
Yeah.
The inversion kick asks a very pointed question. It asks, if I claim to value side A, let's say high intensity output, do I equally value side B, deep recovery?
And if the honest answer is no?
If the answer is no, if you truly value the grueling workout, but you secretly resent the 9 hours of sleep required to heal from it, then your system has a fatal structural flaw.
That hits a little too close to home. I definitely resent the downtime sometimes. I feel like I'm losing precious time that could be productive. I'll be lying there trying to take a nap on a Sunday, but my brain is screaming at me, you could be answering emails right now. You're falling behind.
And that exact mindset is why high performers burn out. The source literally says, as long as you resent the counterforce, you are fighting half of reality.
Fighting half of reality. Wow.
Think about it mechanically. If you build a race car engine that produces massive, incredible speed, that's side A, but it has a terrible, cheap cooling system, side B, because you think cooling systems are boring and don't win races, what happened?
The engine melts down on the second line.
The engine melts.
Yeah.
If you want to run a marathon, you must fall in love with the recovery. You have to value the pillow exactly as much as you value the pavement.
So you have to value the necessity of the counterforce, not just tolerate it.
Yes. If you don't revere the counterforce, the tension snaps, and you get either acute injury or chronic apathy.
So when we hold this duality correctly, when we value both the effort and the restoration equally, what actually happens? We get to step 3, which is synergy.
Yes. Represented by the triangle symbol, synergy is the emergent property of perfectly held tension. Let's look at the failure states first. If you have pure effort without restoration, you get burnout.
Right.
If you have pure restoration without effort, you get stagnation. But if you have effort and restoration locked in the right rhythm, you get a third, entirely new thing, sustainable momentum. The source calls it renewable capacity.
It's like 1 + 1 = 3.
Precisely. The emergent property is something neither force could ever create on its own. And this is where that weird notation from the intro ABCD finally comes into play. It maps the relationship between what the author calls iterators and delineators.
Okay, let's unpack those terms. Iterators and delineators. It sounds very technical.
Think of a river. An iterator is the water. It's the raw energy, the drive, the person mode we talked about earlier. Water wants to flow everywhere. It wants to expand. It wants to move fast. It's pure chaotic energy.
Okay.
A delineator is the riverbank. It's the firm structure, the constraint, the principal mode. The bank limits the water and directs it.
Water and banks. Iterators and delineators.
Now, if you have water, the iterator without banks, the delineator, what do you have? You have a swamp.
It just floods everywhere and goes nowhere.
Exactly. It's messy. It spreads out. The energy completely dissipates. But if you have banks without water, you just have a dry, dead trench. It's rigid and entirely empty.
So the formula A over B.
The formula AB isn't a mathematical fraction. It represents energy flowing through structure. That is the literal physics of ignition. You desperately need the hard constraint to give the raw energy its velocity.
That is such a powerful image. Because we often think of rules and structures as things that hold us back. So structure isn't the enemy of freedom. Structure is the actual mechanism of freedom.
That's the bumper sticker right there. Constraints create velocity.
Okay, so let's recap where we are. We have the harvest, which is closing the loop properly. We have the atom, which is starting with aligned identity. And we have the duality, which is fueling the journey with productive tension. Now we get to the part of the manuscript that honestly just blew my mind. Chapter H, saturated synergization.
Saturated synergization. This is step 3 continued. The mathematics of breakthrough.
The scene the author uses to explain this is so brilliantly grounded. The traveler is just standing in their kitchen making coffee. It's not a mountaintop revelation. There are no burning bushes. It's an ordinary morning. But they have this profound realization about what they call the quarter second.
This is the atomic unit of human experience. The traveler notices the exact split second the water in the kettle begins to boil. Not the general minute it boiled, but the precise phase shift in the sound of the metal and the release of the steam.
Right.
The realization is that reality doesn't actually happen in hours or days. Reality happens in quarter seconds. But most of us are completely missing 99% of them.
Because we're either running on total autopilot or we're trapped in our heads worrying about the future.
Right. The text defines this state as the split between being perceptive and being receptive.
Break those two down for us.
Being perceptive means you are fully in the physical sensation. You feel the heat of the ceramic cup. You smell the roasted coffee. Your physical body is present in the space.
Okay.
Being receptive means you are cognitively aware. You consciously know, I am currently making coffee. You are watching the data of your own life unfold. You are metacognitive.
But normally we can't do both.
Most people violently toggle between the two. They are either completely lost in the physical feeling, like daydreaming while eating a meal, or they are stuck entirely in the thinking, planning their entire workday while blindly pouring the water, not tasting a thing.
Or there's that third trap the source mentions, which is performative presence. And I felt incredibly called out by this section.
Oh, performative presence is the absolute worst trap. That's when you are, say, meditating, but really you are just watching yourself meditate from a distance. You're sitting there thinking, wow, look at me being so incredibly mindful right now. I'm so zen. I'm doing a great job at meditating.
I'm winning at sitting still.
Exactly. You aren't actually present at all. You're performing presence for an internal audience of one. It's still a completely split state. You are fundamentally divided.
So if all of those are traps, what is true saturated synergization?
It is dual participation. It is the incredibly rare state of being fully perceptive in the body and fully receptive in the mind at the exact same fraction of a second.
So you're pouring the water, you're feeling the literal weight of the kettle in your hand, and you are entirely consciously aware of the trajectory of the water and the outcome simultaneously.
Yes. There is absolutely no lag. There's no internal observer sitting back separate from the actor. The actor and the observer merge into one entity.
Sounds a lot like flow state.
It is the underlying mechanics of flow state. And this is exactly where the mathematics gets wild. The source introduces an actual equation for transformation, where S is the saturation coefficient.
Okay. We promised the listener no high school algebra at the start, but please walk us through the concept here. Why do we need a mathematical equation for being present?
Because we need to understand the concept of leverage. Think back to synergy from Chapter G. That was additive. Effort plus rest equals a good result. 5 plus 5 equals 10. That's solid linear growth.
Right.
But saturated synergization from Chapter H is multiplicative. The formula implies multiplying the entire result by S squared. So instead of 5 plus 5 equals 10, it's roughly 5 times 5 equals 25.
That is a massive jump in output. Why does saturation, just paying attention, create that kind of exponential leverage?
Because it's not just passively paying attention, it's closing the reality feedback loop instantly. When you are saturated, fully merged in the quarter second, your perception of reality is instantaneous.
So you catch things faster.
Exactly. You notice a typo in the manuscript before you even finish typing the word. You notice the kettle boiling the absolute instant it happens, saving energy. You notice the incredibly subtle shift in a client's tone of voice during a negotiation.
And this creates a compounding effect over time.
Yes, your competence amplifies your confidence. Your confidence amplifies your physical energy. Your energy amplifies your mental focus. If you are unsaturated, if you are mindless, you are just grinding. You are just adding effort. You are brute forcing your way through the day.
But if you are saturated,
you are multiplying. You get exponential breakthrough in the exact same amount of chronological time because you aren't making dozens of micro errors. You aren't leaking cognitive energy every 3 seconds.
this connects directly to the concept of the fractal bridge mentioned near the end of the chapter, doesn't it?
It does. A transformation cycle, the big 11-step macro loop we talked about at the beginning, is actually built out of millions of these tiny micro quarter seconds.
So the macro is made of the micro.
Right. If those individual quarter seconds are hollow, if you're constantly distracted, if you're resentful of the work, if you're flickering the overall cycle drags, it feels incredibly heavy. It feels like you're trying to swim through thick peanut butter.
I know that feeling all too well.
But if those quarter seconds are saturated, if you are aggressively applying dual participation, the cycle accelerates exponentially. The core insight the author drives home here is profound. You don't actually need more time in your day. You need denser time.
You don't need more time, you need denser time.
Wow. That completely reframes the entire productivity conversation we culturally obsess over. We're always out here trying to save time or manage time with apps and hacks, but we should be trying to densify the time we already have.
Exactly. One single saturated hour of deep work is worth 10 unsaturated hours of distracted grinding. That is the true physics of ignition. That is exactly how the traveler finally learns to stop flickering. Okay, Let's zoom out for a minute and look at this whole architecture we've covered today, because it's a complete interlocking system, not just a random grab bag of self-help tips.
It is a meticulous blueprint. Let's trace it. The atom from Chapter F is the where. It's the identity starting point. Are you starting from a place of deep truth or a place of societal should? Are you building your house on a hollow atom?
Right. Then the duality from Chapter G is the what? It's the fuel. Are you actively using tension to drive you forward, or are you fighting against the need for rest? Do you respect the riverbanks?
Then the synergy and saturation from Chapter H is the how. It's the leverage. Are you merely adding or are you multiplying? Are you fully present in the quarter second?
And finally, the harvest from Chapter E is the why. It's the wisdom. Are you actively locking in the gains and naming the capacities so you don't have to start completely over from scratch every single Monday?
It fundamentally shifts your entire perspective from being a helpless victim of your own behavioral patterns, like the flickering, the chronic burnout, the failed New Year's resolutions, to being an intentional architect of your own systems.
The traveler says right at the end of the section, the map works because it makes the invisible visible. I feel like that's the ultimate takeaway here. We've been out here trying to just feel our way through life, trusting our gut, but without a real map, we just keep walking in giant circles in the dark.
Precisely. Intuition is a wonderful thing, but intuition without rigid structure is just chaos. When you can clearly see the duality, you stop fighting it. When you can see the atom, you stop starting your engines with the wrong fuel. When you deeply understand saturation, you stop counting the hours and you start making the moments incredibly dense. It turns personal transformation from a happy accident into an intentional design.
This has been such a dense and rewarding deep dive. So here is my final challenge for you, the listener, as you step away from this. We talked heavily about the quarter second. The very next time you do something completely mundane, making your morning coffee, walking across the parking lot to your car, opening your email inbox, look closely at that quarter second.
Pay attention to it.
Ask yourself, are you just in it, running on autopilot, thinking about next week's grocery list? Or are you truly saturated in it? Are you merely passing time, or are you actively densifying it? Because the blueprint is right there waiting for you.
Transformation stops being accidental the moment you learn the math.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you in the next cycle.
See you there.